Welcome to the dYdX Foundation Ecosystem Briefing Series, where we dive into the people and the ideas that are shaping the dYdX protocol. Today, I'm joined by Rafa. He is the co-founder of Numia, and Numia is the primary data provider for dYdX, basically since the launch of V4. They have played a crucial role in how data across the dYdX chain is indexed, analyzed, and made accessible. And yeah, in this conversation, we're going to be talking through how Numia first got involved with dYdX. We'll also explore some of its tools and how they are shaping how the ecosystem understands market activity, governance participation, and user behavior. So yeah, Rafa, for many people who may not know you yet, can you introduce yourself and Numia and how you got involved with dYdX?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having us. Like you said, my name is Rafael. I go by Rafa, which is easier. Come from El Salvador, small country, has been very crypto relevant in the last few years. Based in Germany right now. We started Numia around 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago. I'm a data scientist by training out of, frustration because there weren't enough data tools in the ecosystem to just properly analyze data or just extract value faster from data. Numia just kind of like came together. We focused on building, back then tools and analytics for L1s. Over the past few years, Numia has evolved into what we now call a data cloud for blockchains. So imagine like a little or a small AWS or Google Cloud platform for data specialized for blockchains, essentially. In general, our goal is to, provide services across three pillars: infrastructure, analytics, and growth. When dYdX launched V4, which is their own L1, they put a few RFPs out on the data side, indexing side, etc. And we just participated. We gave it an approach that was like insights analytics first. And I think that resonated a lot with the team. So we got involved first with a small public dashboard. And from there, we've been growing the partnership gradually and expanding to more and more products. And yeah, I love to talk about what the work we've done with the community and the team as well.
I actually use Numia a lot for my own work. I do a lot of reporting for the analysts call, for the dYdX ecosystem report, the semi-annual, the annual, and Numia is typically my source of truth. So thank you for the work that you've done. So Numia has been the main data provider since, like you said, V4 launch. Thinking back to that period, what were some of the biggest data or infrastructure challenges that you had to tackle early on? I guess you mentioned the difficulty to find consolidated data. Was there anything else?
The challenges are, I would say, like in two areas, two big areas. There's obviously more nuance, but I think for the sake of staying high level, number one is kind of like the infra side. Blockchain has a lot of data. Most of it is not directly useful. There's a lot of cryptography out there in the chain, and there's a lot of like it's a lot basically. It's very complex, and you need decent hardware at the end of the day to be able to process that amount of data, store it, read it real time, etc. Right? So especially also with dYdX during launch, one of the biggest challenges. To give you a more concrete example, we index the actual mempool of dYdX. This is like where everybody, including market makers, submit transactions, right? They don't all get processed. So like the amount of data in the mempool is so much more than than the ones that end up in the chain. So just processing that real time has been very challenging in general. And you need to like have this knowledge on the infra side to be able to build the infra process on, right? That's number one. And number two, something that we've observed across the whole industry, which is, I mean, in my opinion, this is a more personal opinion, I would say, this lack of wearing kind of like the Web 2 product lenses, I call it. In Web 2, I come from Web 2 in the 2010s. We talked a lot about retention, engagement, funnels, conversions, etc. And when we came to blockchain, we felt like that those ideas weren't spread out enough. People were like focused on the tech but not on the products. And if you look at the on-chain data and then you want to abstract that into useful metrics, it's very challenging because imagine you go to an explorer, you look at a transaction, sometimes there are like 300 orders placed from different traders, and like a normal user wouldn't understand that, right? So making sense out of that and make it consumable in such a way that product and marketing can make use out of the data was essentially like the other layer that we deemed really challenging.
You built the public dYdX dashboard using DataLenses. How did that collaboration with the community come together? And what insights are you most excited about for people to explore there? This is one of the ones I use actually for the staking metrics, for the trader activity, the volume and whatnot.
One of our core offerings is public dashboards, right? For making kind of like the on-chain activity transparent. This was the first product that we worked with the dYdX team, the first grant that we get essentially. Data Lenses is basically a set of analytics widgets that are what we call descriptive analytics. So really they describe what's happening on chain. They read from chain, we process the data, transform it, and really just like spit it out in a way that's consumable. Really, like we describe essentially what's happening on chain. In our lenses dashboard, you can see all of the metrics from trading volume in V4 to liquidation, staking activity, bridge activity, user analytics, and wallet insights. Right. All the metrics that you can see in data lenses were a combination of requests from the community and from the dYdX team, essentially. And again, our goal here is like the transparency side, making sure that all these metrics and work in collaboration with the dYdX team. Their goal also was to make sure that the community has access to this data. If somebody wants to understand what's happening on chain, the data is there, right? Because again, when you go to the dYdX trading platform, it's a different use case, right? The trading
Yeah.
platform is for you to trade, for you to open, close positions, etc. This is for you to kind of like take a step back and have a more holistic way of understanding what's happening overall in the whole chain, right?
I love this tool, and I can see that you have it for some other chains as well. I believe you had Celestia, Osmosis. I see Cosmos there as well.
Yeah, correct. So we, interestingly enough, like we work in different ways with different customers. So our data cloud is like very flexible. In the case of DYDX, it was important that the dashboard was public, open, etc. In the case of these other chains as well. But there are some other chains, for example, that we work with where we basically have created dashboards that are private for them or that have their own branding in a separate URL, for example. But again, in the case of dYdX, it was important that this was an independent thing, right, managed by a third party like us. So that's kind of like the reason why we had this set up.
More recently, you built an AI agent that lets the dYdX teams query on-chain data using natural language. I would love for you to show this too, by the way, if you can. How is this being used today, and what problems has it solved compared to traditional dashboards?
We basically built, and this is a good example of how we've been evolving the partnership with the dYdX team. So again, like we started with lenses. We also worked with the dYdX team to index the data and make it available programmatically via BigQuery, a data warehouse from Google. If you think about those two products that we had first, BigQuery, which is a data warehouse where you have to write SQL in order to extract the data, versus DataLenses, which I just showed. It's like a spectrum, right? Like on the one side, you have to program in SQL. It's a very dry way to get the data. It's not easy for visualizations, so it's very technical. Like only a set of peoples can do it. And then on the other side, the dashboard in itself is what we call an opinionated dashboard, right? Like we made an opinion on what widgets to put there, like what filters, how to arbitrarily define the metrics in some cases, right? With SQL, you're very flexible, but not everybody has the expertise. And on the dashboard, you're not that flexible. The agent is kind of like the perfect sweet spot between those two, right? Because here, what we did is basically we fed the agent all of the data that we had in these other platforms, and the agent can write SQL itself in the background and analyze the data in BigQuery, or it can like also call the endpoints, the APIs that we build for lenses. So it can combine the flexibility of SQL and the readiness of the data from lenses and provide the user with like very interesting answers. So just to give you an example, I mean, we could like, for instance, select here, I want to ask about liquidations to the agent. And what's happening in the background is the agent has a set of tools. It has some context essentially to tell it what data it has access to, in what cases potentially use some data, but in other cases it figures out itself what data to use based on the question that the user asks, basically, right? So here it's giving me basically the last 30 days of Bitcoin liquidations in USD value, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's really cool that there's even a chart.
Yes. So, and that's again like the flexibility that we didn't program the agent to like put a chart when somebody asks something like this. Like it decides in the background if it's only a table and if it's a chart as well. In this case, it decides to do both. But maybe, we have liquidation data in lenses, but maybe something just to showcase a little bit like how this is a little bit different and it's between SQL and lenses. Maybe now you basically, we all use ChatGPT and all these AI tools now, right? And context is starting to be more and more prominent, right? So I think that's really nice that you have a question, but you can like double click on it and just keep going deeper, right? And you have that flexibility, which again in the dashboard you don't have. And just to give you an example, let's say I say, okay, can you now give me the ETH liquidations and compare them to the PTC ones. And let's see, I don't know what it will do, but like let's see if it maybe builds a chart where it like shows both. I'm not 100% sure. But again, you could double click on a different question. Oh, it did it.
Oh,
Exactly. This
wow.
is really interesting. Yeah.
I have not been using this one, and I probably will begin using it because the charts are also kind of branded in dYdX branding, which reduces the amount of work that would go into editing a chart.
And this is interesting, right? Because you see like a very obvious correlation, but in some cases, like, the eighth one like looks a little bit different, right? So just to showcase a little bit like the different types of analysis or the different type of approaches that you can have depending on the tools that you have access to. To answer your initial question, that's why this agent is different and it's so helpful in this whole product suite that we have for dYdX.
Yeah, no, I love this. So TokenPulse, it's another tool that you've built to track dYdX token movements and market activity. How does this kind of visibility, I'm asking a question that I know the answer to, but for the sake of like the viewers, how does this kind of visibility change the way that the ecosystem thinks about token dynamics?
TokenPulse, not to overwhelm everybody with so many tools, but I think it's really nice to kind of like showcase really all this work that we have done because all these tools are really useful and we want to get more feedback from the team and the community, right? Just keep improving them. But TokenPulse is interesting.
And also, there's many tools, but the tools are for different categories of users. So yeah, there are actually not many.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. If you also see the tools that we have, they also kind of like have been, we've been a part of from with the DYDX for a few years now, and they also speak for the evolution of they speak to the evolution of the platform, right? Because for example, Token Pools is a new product, very interesting, and the goal here is rather than analyzing the activity on chain or understanding volumes, trading activity, etc., which is like the main use case of the dYdX platform. This focuses on the dYdX token. I mean, we all know how important is a token for a project, right? There's so many decisions when it comes to the token that teams take very early on. Now the way you distribute on Genesis, the way you distribute to investors, the team, grants, the community, those decisions have impact down the road, right? Inflation of your token, staking rewards, etc. So our goal with this dashboard was to provide visibility and very deep visibility into like how those decisions and how the utility and usage of the token might be impacting its price and the way the users and the DYDX holders use it. Everything that you would see here in this dashboard, for example, here in our exchange analysis, is related again to the dYdX token specifically. Like we track in what exchanges it's been traded, what is the current volume. It's very real time, so we'll look even at like the last 10 minutes if we wanted, or the last 30 minutes, for example. We analyze the sell pressure to really understand like positive or negative impact on the price, specifically seeing understanding in what exchanges it trades like with higher or lower sell pressure. We track that over time. For example, here, for instance, you can see the sell pressure versus buy pressure on the Binance exchange, which is like where the most of the trading volume on centralized exchanges happens. Also, something very interesting that we did in this dashboard. So we track events, specific movements of big movements of the token related to exchanges, for example, and we correlate those to the price. Our idea was kind of like trying to give the team some tools to understand if big movements, big transactions, big sell positions, big buy positions on different exchanges could potentially have affected the price historically. And this chart essentially aims to do that. and you can basically hover over these interesting events, like click on them and like analyze them in more detail. So there you can see we saw sex withdrawals about 60K, 30K, currently not much. But sometimes when you see a really, really big move, for instance, here, that 200K here off a deposit, you want to understand like if these things happen like during, how do people's activity correlate with the token when the price moves, or the other way around, right? This is a really interesting dashboard because it's first of its kind, to our knowledge in the crypto world. We track many things like how the token flows from different chains. Again, for all those use cases, we have different type of events that we track. We track whale activity and what they're doing with the token. We track how incentives have worked, like the dYdX incentives, trading rewards. Have they worked in the past? How are they impacting the price? How have they impacted the price in the past? So it's a lot, but it's this dashboard. If you want to understand, want to have like this X-ray of a token, is perfect for that. And we hope that this helps the team to make decisions in the future about how you handle inflation, potentially how you handle rewards, how you handle grants, even because you could also track like where grants are moving, etc. That is why this dashboard probably only makes sense a little bit later in the life cycle of a chain or of an L1, and not necessarily from day one. But yes, that's why, and how TokenPulse covers like a different area compared to the other products.
Super cool tool. So yeah, your latest addition is an on-chain CRM for dYdX. I've not had a look at this, so I'm excited for you to show it to us as well. For listeners who may not be familiar with the concept of a CRM, how does this help the ecosystem to better understand and engage users?
No, that's a great question. And again, I go back to the life cycle of a project in Web3, right? You need, when you're building your tools, you need the infra. Then when you launch, you need the tools to understand the analytics. And then once you're a little bit more mature and you understand a little bit better about your chain, your dynamics, you want tools to grow, right? So when we say, hey, we work across three pillars, infra, analytics, and growth, the CRM is exactly part of that growth suite that we hope, helps the community and the team to do better retention across the platform, do better growth activities and tactics. So a CRM is basically a custom relationship management tool where, in the Web2 world, it's essentially, a database of your user base. Imagine when you make a call to a support agent of a bank or a different service that you use, or, your telecom, they have a CRM where they can look at, what your plan is, how much you spend with them, how long have you been with them since your first contract, what kind of phone you might have, et cetera, right? So it's kind of like this state of the world database that tells me, who is my user, what are they doing, how can I help them better? And a CRM is so essential for business in general because, again, there's a support use case for, coming from Web2. But there's the marketing use case where the marketing team, when they run campaigns, right? Let it be email campaigns or potentially a trading competition, right? You normally want to target those to specific segments or personalize your messages in different ways depending on what segment you're targeting, right? You normally would use a CRM to create a segment and say, hey, CRM, since you're the database about my users and you have like this state of the world about their profiles, give me all the users that are very loyal, have traded in the last 30 days at least, 20 times, have participated in previous trading competitions, just to give you an example. That's the kind of segment that you would export from your CRM. And that's exactly the type of use case that a CRM should support, right? Like, how do you manage your customers around that with data?
My understanding of what it would be is different. So it's more of an on-chain CRM than, like the typical CRM, which is great, Like you said, this is not something that a lot of people have in Web3 and is also very insightful for decision making.
You're absolutely right. That's very important to underscore. Like, this is an on-chain CRM. Like, we don't use any data outside of like what we can see on the on-chain data. So it's all there. It's all public. But the challenge is in like aggregating that, like keeping the database up to date, real time. Like, all of that is like very, very complex. But here, just to give you a sense of like what are the attributes that we store or we check on chain about, like the users are like, we identify them by the wallet address, obviously, but then we track things like, hey, all-time trades, like all-time trading volume, preferred markets to trade in, right? Like the average trading size, how many trades they have in the last 30 days. Yeah, very creative with like the amount of activity that you track here. And again, the more descriptive are your columns attributes, the better be for somebody in marketing like you, for instance, to build a very nice segment to use on a specific marketing tactic, right? So that's what the CRM is. So, we build this tool for the team, but like it's public. Anybody can also like use it. You can search by a wallet address. You can filter by different metrics, like how many trades, volume, etc. And we're expanding its capabilities as we go. But again, our goal really is here to provide the tools to also help the team grow, right? And that's where this on-chain CRM fits in.
So, Numia has received multiple grants for good reasons, clearly. From a builder's perspective, how important are grants to support your work and allow you to build long term, high impact tools like these ones?
I'm going to say existential. They have been existential for us in the sense that we are bootstrap business. Like we don't have any investors. Partners like dYdX have trusted us, and hopefully we've delivered what they trusted us and what they wanted from us, and they keep hiring us. So I hope that's the case. But like without the grants, we it would be really hard to have a healthy business as we have right now. We're a profitable business. I come from the enterprise sales world. I used to sell analytics enterprise software before. At the end of the day, you could argue that when you get a grant, at the end of the day, it's just a different way of payment. But at the same time, I think projects like dYdX see grants as really like supporting builders, not just buying a service. And I think that that has also been really key in the way that we work together because we found a lot of support from the team and the community. I think they're fundamental, and some of these projects also came proactively out of us because of like this great partnership. And like we got really grants that motivated us to build more and like test things more and like experiment a little bit more. And hence all this tooling has been coming up, right? For some of them, like we didn't get hired or there wasn't necessarily an RFP for a grant. Like, and I think that's what you want out of builders, right? Like you want builders that support your ecosystem proactively, build with you, experiment with you, take some risks with you. And honestly, with the support of the grants, I don't know if we could have done it that way.
As closing thoughts, looking ahead as dYdX continues to grow, what kinds of data tooling or analytics will become even more important over the next year or two? I feel like you've built them already, but you keep building, so there's probably others that could come.
The world of software is changing so fast nowadays with AI. I feel like nobody knows. I feel like I might be so wrong in any of these answers. The way I look at it is like if you look at, the main use case right now for AI being so effective, at least in the software industry, is like the coding agents, right? Like Cloud Code, Cursor, Codex, etc. Developers are now extremely effective at building things. I've been following a little bit like how, this process or this way of like how more companies and more projects in general, not only Web3, adopt more AI. People always come back to this problem like context engineering, right? Like how can you give all these agents like enough context for them to do their task really right? And in Web3, context is tricky because like you need to build all this processing and infra around the on-chain data, which is like messy and complex and cryptographic. You need to build all this infra around the data and then make it accessible to like these agents. I think we, in general, as an industry, need to put a little bit more effort into like fixing context engineering for blockchains so that, not only agents that build code, but also potentially agents that transact or trade or have the right context to execute the things correctly. I think that's super important. There's some interesting things being done out there, but I think my guess, to answer your question, would be tooling around context engineering for blockchains is something that we as an industry need to put more effort into.
It's been so great to have you. Thank you so much for all your contributions to dYdX, and we look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you so much for having us. We, the whole team, appreciates not only you having us here, but also just the support that we have gotten from the team and the community. Like we really genuinely do, and I hope we give the community and the team the value back, if not more, hopefully. And we're here for the long term, and we're really happy to have a partner as DYDX right now with us.